here.
When it's
Test.
Can you hear us?
Thumbs up if you can hear us.
Yay.
Okay.
Perfect. Sorry about that. Switching meetings and that always messes with the audio.
Let's go.
All right, meeting minutes from 120 or from 2/6. No, from what's today? Crap. From 123.
Any comments on the meeting notice from last time?
Nope, I move that we accept them.
Second.
We have concurrence by the board. Thumbs up. 1, 2, 3,
Yes.
4 is Kiewit gonna be? Is she
I
on?
think she's out this week.
Okay,
She's out.
okay, so we've got it passed.
All right, the first,
We also have Grant Paulson. I think he's, Grant, are you the city alternate?
Yeah, I'm the alternate from Hood River City Council. Paul couldn't make it, so I'm filling in.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Grant.
Yeah, sure.
all right, the BA and BO update, I'm gonna pause on that until Carol Sneak comes on with ODOT. If she does not, then we'll follow up on that. All right, our first topic is communications update. Turn it over to Alice.
Hi, everyone. I'm going to keep this really brief. We have 5 minutes and we've got a lot to cover. So in your packets that Mike sent out on Friday, there's a number of communications materials. This is the start of our new kind of QA process to give the Bi-State Working Group a chance to review those documents, provide any feedback. We can have a conversation about it if needed. So I'm just going to go through those one by one. I can pull up, I didn't prepare a slide deck because it's all in your packets, but let me know if you want me to pull up those documents. Otherwise, I'm just going to verbally run through them. So we had almost finalized 2 legislative one-pagers last week, one for Washington and one for Oregon. And they each have different legislative asks. So those are specific to each state, but the general kind of standard language is about the same for both of them. We finalized the Oregon. Washington, we have a few more edits that came in from Mike Fox over the weekend, and then we're just waiting for our legislative consultants to approve that messaging. But we want those to be done pretty much today, if not tomorrow morning at the latest, because we need them for the Gorgeous Nights event on Wednesday. We have a bridge project update from Commissioner Fox. This is an article that's intended to be posted on the website. We may push it out as, you know, on social media, on the two different websites right now, the port and the new website, which we'll get to that in a second. And then we may push it out as a press release. We're not sure, but right now we just really wanted to make sure that we all have agreement on how we're talking about our accomplishments from the last year. If there was anything that I would really recommend the bi-state group review, if you haven't already, it's that piece, just to make sure that we're all in agreement with some of the language that we're using. We have and just a note, Marla sent out a few edits after we sent the packet, so there's a few changes that are going to be made to that. And then in addition to that, we have a press release for Senate Bill 431 that is queued up for tomorrow to be released after the meeting with the governor. I think in your packet also is the actual language for the Senate bill, so you can review those two things. We've had our legislative consultants review that. That's been reviewed by Mike Fox, Marla, Mike Shannon, and Genevieve at the port. So we spent a lot of time making sure that that language was really well crafted last week. And the pitch for that is really that we want to focus on the bipartisan support and the sort of full regional across Oregon support for the bill. And then we have a geotech article. We'd like to get that out as soon as possible since geotech work started today. In the future, we'll have this earlier so that the bi-state working group can review it, but we have it pretty much queued up, ready to go. So as soon as we get final approval, we'll get that up on the website. And just to reiterate, all these documents, if you have any edits, I'll tell you that the one-pagers are pretty critical to get those edits back to us. The geotech article is pretty critical to get that as soon as possible. And the rest of it, if you could get us review any sort of edits by Wednesday, that would be really great. So that's January, that's all in your packet. Coming up for the next bi-state working group meeting in February, we have several pieces that we're beginning to work on. I want to quickly touch on the website. So the new website, hoodriverbridge.org, is live. We're also keeping the port site live as well. With our focus on all the legislative pieces last week, we didn't quite get to launching the website press release. So for now, we're going to keep both sites up. We're going to kind of do a soft launch, a little broader soft launch with the new site. All the information is the same. So all the documents are same in both of them. We even downloaded all of the documents and resources from the last 3 to 4 years on the new website. So there'll be a bit of redundancy. So Jen and I are actually posting kind of the same thing. So for this meeting, we posted the materials on both sites. So just an FYI, both sites are valid. Both sites still have information, up-to-date information, but we're gonna kind of have a little bit of a transition time. That also gives the bi-state working group a little bit more time to review the website, and we'll get that press release in the next round of review materials for you. Any questions before I launch into February comms, what you're gonna expect?
Not a question, but I could make a comment. We say that the geotech is underway. It's about 50 feet from us right now, and there's we can see the thing spinning.
Yeah.
If we turn the camera around, the
It's a
geotech
live
is as
view.
close to the camera as I am.
Amazing.
So it's about as close to us as it could be.
That's exciting.
Yes, that you change out the picture that you got here. We've sent Mike a couple of pictures of what's really going on. So let's use one that's
Yeah, great.
really
Great,
shows.
great,
our-
great.
Turn the camera for a sec. Let them enjoy this.
Yeah, construction has started.
You're looking.
Oh yeah, look at that, fun, cool. Definitely, yeah, we can change out any of the images. So just, I think, Mike, we talked about getting some fresh ones and,
Yeah, I'll send you some.
okay, great, yeah, perfect, that's awesome, that's exciting. Great, okay, so in February, we are going to, in the next sort of round of materials that you'll have to review, you'll have the website launch press release. We're developing a piece that explains progressive design build. You'll have that. We're going to develop some smaller pieces that are kind of an overview of the port's responsibilities versus the kind of upcoming responsibilities of the bridge authority. And then we're going to have an update on the primary place of business. The other piece of that, which is sort of a little bit of a broader comms update, is that we're going to start developing an email newsletter template. We're going to develop that through MailChimp. So the idea is to sort of take these printed monthly updates that the port has been doing for a number of years, adapt that to an email, and so that we can really begin to push out these news posts that we're putting on the website, and we have some direct email stakeholder engagement with that. I also will add all of our press contacts to that list. We can add, you know, if you have people that you want to make sure are on that list, we can add them. We just prefer to do it with their permission. That's usually best practices. So that's something that will be coming up. So we're going to develop that kind of with HNTB, with Mike and Marla and Genevieve, and then we'll have kind of like a template printout in the next group of materials for you to review. And then I want to talk about tolling. So last week we had a really great comms meeting with Mike Shannon, Mike Fox, Marla, and Genevieve. And we talked about many, many things, but one of the things that came up was sort of Genevieve's kind of take on what the port needs in terms of toll increases in their timeline. And out of that discussion, we realized we're going to have a whole separate meeting next week. And I apologize if I'm taking anybody's thunder by talking about this meeting, but this week we're going to have a meeting just to hash out the schedule of what the port needs in order to go out to the public to raise those tolls. But in that conversation, it became pretty clear that having a February live Facebook event in which we know that the public is going to ask us about tolling is probably premature. We're just not quite there yet. So we really need to make sure that we're working with the port and we have alignment on how we're going to proceed. So right now we are tabling the Facebook live event. We will revisit it. We will do it again when we're ready to go out to the public, but just wanted to give you that update on that. And then, yeah, we've talked about the website. So there's going to be redundancy over the next month. And that's pretty much it. I know I just gave you a lot of information. We have Sean here from Story Gorge. So in just a minute, I'm going to have Jessica and Sean talk about our kind of video plan for the next 4 to 5 months. But before we get to that, does anybody have any comments on the January, February comms?
I want to compliment you guys. You know, it seems like now we got the momentum up. It's going in the right direction. We're starting to see some volume and content. And I just want to thank all of you guys for jumping on this. I think it's going well now.
Great. Thank you. Appreciate it. Cool. Well, with that, Jess and Sean, you guys want to talk about videos?
Sure, and I don't have much to say. I just want to introduce Sean O'Connor from Story Gorge. Some of you may already know him, but one of the things that we are also planning on doing is, I mean, I think that it's no surprise that video is one of the most effective ways to communicate important aspects of, you know, infrastructure projects. And Story Gorge really excels at bringing in the human aspect into this story. And so I wanted for Sean to be here because we've been mapping out what we're hoping to work on, like Alice just said, in the next like 4 to 5 months for a couple of videos. And so I'll pass it over to Sean, who can kind of talk through what we're thinking about and get your feedback on it.
Yeah, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Sean O'Connor, founder of Story Gorge. We're based here in Hood River. I can see the bridge from our studio, so it's pretty convenient. Yeah, and just like she just said, you know, our whole role in this world is to create films that evoke insight and action among audiences. and really help to inform so that people understand different actions that they can take in this world. And so having this regular quarterly updates from the human side, from the residents or the leadership behind it, or all these different perspectives that again let the public know what's going on, while simultaneously giving them those kind of heartstrings to pull at the human side of the impact that this bridge will have, the positive impact that it's going to have on continuing the link between the two states. And some of you might have seen, we already did a piece with everybody. So with Kevin Greenwood and Marla, that they originally took to DC as well. And so we're already very familiar with the project and very much looking forward to really finding these stories throughout the community, and then being that kind of quick visual voice that's really palatable and impactful. So thrilled to be part of the team. We're working on the contract right now. And again, the hope is to do these on a quarterly basis, so that as questions come up among the general public, that they're answered in this form and fashion. And it's a really easy way to share what's going on as well. So thank you to everybody, and looking forward to probably meeting a lot of you. We'll be doing a lot of pre-interviews and full interviews with a lot of folks. So I'm sure a lot of us will get a chance to meet in person.
Thank you.
I
All
think that concludes our communications update, unless there's anything else that this group needed to talk about today.
All right, let's move on to Story Gorge, or Gorgeous Nights, Gorgeous Nights update. The Washington event is on February the 8th from 5:30 to 7:30. Right now I have the attendees as Commissioner Anderson, Mayor Keithler, Commissioner Fox, Kevin Greenwood, and myself. We will also be doing outreach meetings. We have them set up right now with Senator King, Representative Mossbrucker, Representative Waters, Representative Corey, Senator Elias, Representative Barkus, and Representative Vi. So those will all be in the morning prior to the event on Wednesday evening. So I think everyone's set up for their travel arrangements. If there's any questions or anything on that, let me know.
If I could, so we're all traveling up tomorrow night. Some of us are gonna get in there a little later than some of the others. Do you guys want to meet at the hotel? We have to be at the lobbyist at 8 o'clock.
8 o'clock on Wednesday morning.
You want to meet 7:30, 7 o'clock in the lobby for breakfast or something?
Oh, in the morning, yeah, I was like,
Yeah.
I don't think we'll all be getting there by 7:30 PM.
No.
Yeah, I'm flexible. I think the 8 AM goal is for us to have our little
Yeah.
debrief and connect in, so
So
if
we
we
need
all,
travel time to get to wherever that is.
yeah, yeah.
I can do 7 in the lobby.
Okay, 7 in the lobby.
Okay.
Okay,
All right. And then on the next week, February 15th is our event in Salem. Again, it's from 5:30 to 7:30. One-on-one meetings are being coordinated through Thorn Run, so we'll get you updates on any one-on-ones that may come out of that meeting. Right now, I do not have anyone staying over. So if you need rooms, let me know prior to the event. We'll get something set up. We also have tomorrow, the SB 431 hearing is at 5 o'clock tomorrow. It's both in Salem, in person, as well as on Zoom. The folks who will be speaking on behalf of that bill are Senator Bonham, Representative Helfrich, Commissioner Anderson, Commissioner Fox, Mayor Keithler, Mayor Blackburn, Sheriff English, Doug Gibson with Mount Adams Fruit, and then myself. We're also going to be meeting with the labor unions. This is why we're actually in Washington to discuss some letters of support for them for the project.
that's on Wednesday, and then we're meeting with the Region 9 on Thursday afternoon.
Correct. Federally, Hal, and he's on the call if we have any questions. He will be setting up monthly virtual meetings starting this month. Right now, the attendees are Commissioner Fox, Commissioner Anderson, and myself. So if you want to be involved in those meetings, let us know so that Hal will know to check with you on your schedules. Any other updates on the federal level?
No, I would just say that we're targeting the week of President's Week and probably at the end of at the end of the week, because that's when congressional staff tend to be more available. And these are Zoom meetings with congressional staff, so the key congressional transportation staff for the Oregon and Washington delegation members. And so we're looking at the 24th of February, but some of them might slip into the 23rd, but we'll stay in close touch and let you know as the schedule goes. And we're trying to set them up so that they're back to back to back, so that we can have a block of time when those of us who are participating can really focus in, but not have to spend the entire day doing the meetings. So hopefully we'll have them every 30 minutes or maybe even every 20-25 minutes. And they'll be on the 24th.
All right.
Good, thank you.
All right, so let's move down to the,
One real quick one. Did you hear back from Doug? Is he gonna go down or is he flying down or is he gonna? do
have
Zoom?
not heard back from him. I will check in
We
with
need
Doug.
to give him a call. If you
Yep.
don't have his number, I've got it. Because if he needs to get registered, if he's gonna Zoom, right?
I think either way, he needs to be registered.
Well, Katie was gonna take care of it if he was
Coming in
down
person.
there.
Yes, to know.
Yep, I'll check with him.
Okay.
All right, moving to the Hood River White Salmon Bridge Authority. The primary place of business was finalized as Oregon. The communications folks talked about, we're gonna be responding to some of the comments that we received on that. Both the counties, Hood River and Quick Tack, are working through their appointment processes. I think both of those are on schedule for February, as far as I know, unless there's updates on that to be finalized.
So there was a request for change. Jake, why don't you speak to that?
Yeah, one of the discussions that we had is between Hood River and Clickitat County, we were thinking about putting that 2-pager as an addendum onto the CFA. So that, you know, our agreements are memorialized so that other future commissions or councils can't make easy changes to it, because in order to do that, you'd have to get the buy-off on everyone.
So there'll still be resolutions at each end in each county concerning the specifics of how appointments happen, but the structure of it will be in a addendum to the CFA.
Okay, and Steve Siegel is on. Steve, did you hear that? Is there any,
You're on mute, Steve.
I did, yes, thank you.
do you have anything in response to that, or need to think about that and get back to the group? Or is that okay as far as your?
No, I think it's okay. I think we're gonna have to think a little bit about how to fit it in, but yes, I think it's okay.
Okay, perfect.
This was a response to cities' requests to kind of make it a little bit more substantial.
Okay.
Is that a fair statement?
All right. In your packet, you'll find what we're calling the final draft of the CFA. I guess we'll need to. Can we move forward with getting these signed and approved, or does the amendment need to happen before the signatures?
I think you need the amendment.
Prior to the signatures, right? Okay, so we'll have to do a modified, we'll get with Steve, we'll get a modified version of the CFA out this week. And then those will be ready to go to your boards for signature.
I wouldn't say I mean, if we want to make the agreement that it's a minor modification, just adding that. We could agree with the minor modification, and then
So-
it doesn't need to come back to
What
us
you're saying is we go forward with the CFA as it is today, and then we can easily.
with the addition.
Oh,
Note
To
the addition.
incorporate.
no,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't think this needs to be formalized by Steve.
Okay, perfect.
It just doesn't seem worth that to me.
Okay, so then I guess the ask is then, we are okay or given direction then to move forward, the 6 parties can move forward with the current final CFA. To take it to their boards for signature with
With
the
the
amendment
2-page
to,
With the,
Add on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go for a signature.
okay, everyone's on board with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And I guess the first one, gets Kevin on, I'll follow up with Kevin. The first one would be potentially the Port Commission could do this as early as tomorrow.
No, they won't do it tomorrow because
Okay.
It's not on the
We've got
agenda, so-
minimum. There's two of us that are out.
Okay, so it'll probably be the 21st. then.
Yeah.
Okay.
It has to be-
I think one of the,
It's not on the agenda right now.
I was just gonna say, I just got off the phone with Administrator Rayburn for White Salmon. And sounds like the first meeting in March will likely be the best for White Salmon staff. So between either Michael or I can confer with the members of the working group to find out the appropriate schedule for adoption.
Or we give it to the mayor and she'll take care of it.
Yeah, we can, I mean, if we wanna sync up. We can adjust if needed. The fifth, or we have a meeting next week, the 15th, so if we're trying to track that. However, all of our meetings are falling on a calendar, back time from there, and if our. March 1 meeting fits within that, or if we need to be sooner, we could be the 15th would be the other option, next Wednesday.
And my understanding, and Steve, correct me if I say this wrong, is that the CFA is, as it is in your packet, is ready to go for signature at the next board meeting for those 6 entities that they choose to do it at. So if you want to do it next week, you could do it next week. If you want to do
There's
it,
a 2-pager in here too.
we'll have to attach those to it. That they're pretty much ready to go to your boards to have signatures. So we'll get the attachments to that.
Mike, this is Steve Siegel. So one of the things we distributed, or I think you've distributed,
Yep.
is kind of a draft resolution that would be the resolution for the CFA, or at least a template for it. And in it, we mentioned that the boards were approving it as, as to form, meaning that some minor adjustment could occur after it was approved without having to kind of reapprove it. I guess the question is, could we agree that any changes needed to kind of add the appointment process, perhaps after some people approve it, would fall within that definition?
Yeah, I think you guys.
I think that's what Commissioner Anderson just said, right?
Yeah, they're in agreement with that, Steve.
Okay, thank you.
And Steve, just could you remind me, so this agreement takes effect upon being agreed to by all parties? Is that how it works?
The agreement takes effect right away after all 6 parties approve it. The actual starting date for the new commission is July 1st.
Right, but in terms of coordinating, so we're waiting until the 6th of the entities signs it, and then we have an agreement.
Right, and
And the timing is incredibly critical.
Yeah,
February, March is fine.
To me, the only push is the earlier you get it done, the earlier you get your teams in place, the more time you have as an overlap.
To me, the big issue is going to be finding qualified, competent and interested parties to serve on that commission. Getting a full complement of folks signed up is not, it's gonna take some legwork, I know, certainly for what I'm planning.
and then it was,
Yeah, but there's a rule that if the county can't find somebody, you're stuck. You gotta keep going.
I'm not sweet.
That's why he wants the lead time.
There's only one of me, there's not 3 of me, so we still need 3.
and I believe we agreed that everyone could sign it independently and we would just attach those 6 to the document, not try to get 1 page 6, something. Okay. The last piece is just for your consideration. There was 3 possible representate councils that the board could consider. So they're listed in here. If you want to do an interview process or resumes, we'll need to decide how you want to move forward with selecting that person or group that would be the legal representation for the bridge authority.
What do you guys feel?
And these recommendations came from Bill Oley and Schwabe.
So it's going to be the bridge authority is going to make that decision. So what are we being asked?
You would be making, or I guess, a recommendation on who that would be.
Yeah, I think the idea is, yeah, it comes into effect July 1 plus a day. But you really need, there's a thought that you need to have this legal representation ready just as soon as you possibly can under this new authority. So we as the bi-state could be doing the legwork. And if it's, maybe it's a year contract, but it's something that the new board doesn't have to worry about for a year. They're gonna have a lot to do once this thing goes live. This should just be one thing that we would not have to do.
Right, but we don't want to saddle them with legal counsel that they don't want. Right, so. But
The
it seems like
idea-
it's almost backwards that we should, since they don't have a authority of action until July, we should ask for their recommendation, and then as a board, if we can support that, so that we're moving forward with someone who they are comfortable with.
Yeah, assuming that we can get that new board in place fairly quickly.
Again, I mean, if I were on it, I would want a say in who the council is. That's a pretty important decision.
Yeah, I think it's more like, what's the groundwork we could lay now to hand them already vetted potential candidates, but I agree that they need to be the ones making that decision. So I think, is your question, do we want to be taking these recommendations and do an initial vet? And if they all seem capable, just keep that as the packet, or do a full RFQ and try to see if there's other attorneys not coming in via a recommendation that they might want to consider?
Right, how would we want to move forward with?
I would say, let's vet these guys and get a short list ready to go for either the new board as they get nominated. I'm just real concerned about dumping a big load on this new entity on day one, where if we can do a little homework for them to make their first month a little easier, we ought to try and do that.
So maybe one possibility is we get the resumes, and since the two vice chairs are going to be ex officio members, we could do an initial vet with a recommendation to that board. And then that original board that takes over can look at that recommendation, and then that's work that's already been done, and we go from there.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll get resumes out to the group for the ones that have been recommended. Okay. Okay, good. All right, now we're gonna jump over to funding, finance and tolling, and we have Chris Kopp and Kate here, and they're gonna walk you through some modeling and some tolling scenarios that they've looked at. So Chris, go ahead.
Great, thanks, Mike. Should I share my screen from here?
Yes.
Okay, the host is disabled participant screen sharing.
She's fixing that.
All right.
Okay.
All right, can y'all see that?
Now we can.
All right, go up to the front. So we have been building a financial model to allow us to evaluate some preliminary toll rate scenarios to kind of help the port understand how tolls need to change or may need to change in order to be prepared for the opening of the new bridge in October or so 2029. So I'm going to walk you through some of our work to date. We've really been focusing on what needs to be done with some short-term toll increases to build up reserves to the point that it'll support some of the borrowing that will be needed. We've got a couple of experts in this area on the call today. Mary and Peter from PFM are going to be advising the port on a lot of that debt financing. And I want to make very clear from the beginning that we are not municipal bond advisors or municipal financing advisors. And so this should not be considered to be advice or in that sense. So these are some preliminary scenarios to get a sense of how much revenue some of these different potential toll increases could generate and how soon. There will be a more detailed discussion of this at a future meeting. There's a concurrently going on with this is a traffic and revenue study that CDM Smith is working on, and those results should be available in the next month or so. And much higher quality forecasts of the future growth in traffic and other things than we were able to working off of a previous study from, frankly, before the pandemic. So this is kind of preliminary today, but wanted to just give you a sense of sort of what some different toll increases could look like in terms of helping generate the reserve funds that we're going to need to be able to borrow in the future. So what I wanted to talk about today was just a little bit of background on kind of what the tolls have been, what that looks like on some peer bridges, the role of tolls in the current and future operations, and some thoughts that we have in terms of, kind of guidance on how to construct a future toll rate structure or toll rate schedule. And then we'll talk to you a little bit about the model and where it seems to be headed at the moment, at least until the input data gets better with the upcoming traffic and revenue study. So back in 1924, when the bridge opened, the auto toll was 75 cents. There were a lot of other kinds of vehicles using the bridge at the time. And interesting that you can see even what some of the truck tolls were at the time. Kind of modern looking rates in many cases, and this was in 1924. So this is how it has changed over time. We're currently at $2 for automobiles paying by cash and $1 for automobiles paying by Breeze Buy. And if you think about that in terms of what $1 buys over time, when the bridge opened in 1924, that would be a toll of about $12, $13 today, would have been what a car was paying to go across the bridge. But at the same time, even though our nominal rate is about $2 for cash, or is $2 for cash, because of the Breeze Buy discount, we're effectively generating about $1.25 in revenue per automobile crossing the bridge. How's that compare with some similar bridges? So we looked at 30 similar bridges, generally less than 50 million vehicles a year crossing the bridge, toll revenue less than $50 million, and looked at what the tolls are for automobiles. And as you can see here, the median is up around $4 for a cash video toll and about $3 for a Breeze Buy or tag toll.
Chris?
Yes.
These rates on this table is one way, two ways. How does it compare to the way we collect on ours?
These are one-way tolls.
Sorry, Chris, can you say that again?
These are one-way tolls.
Okay, so they're comparable to a one-way toll here.
Right. And, what do we do with this? So obviously the tolls are used to fund bridge operations and maintenance. They're also used to fund, capital repairs and replacements, as well as, different reserve funds that are used to fund those, ongoing operations, maintenance, and repairs. There's also, as the new bridge is built, what we're talking about right now is potential toll increase that would support various, basically building up a reserve fund that will be useful when we go and borrow money for the new bridge. And then after the bridge opens, the tolls will be used by the new authority to basically pay the debt service of the bridge, as well as fund the normal replacement and capital repairs that are needed to maintain the bridge in good condition. So the couple of things that we're trying to do here is, first of all, build up that reserve fund that we're going to need to have at the time that loan closes. And second, get the toll rates in place that they're pretty close, or as close as reasonable, to where they need to be to fund that long-term debt service. Today, we're talking mainly about the first part, which is building up that reserve fund that we'll need at bridge close. And an estimate of that is around $15 million. It would be expected to be needed to be in place by the time that loan closes. And we're thinking that's probably around 2028 or so. So all of this is probably going to get refined as the financial plan comes together, and PFM will be working on that. But in general terms, that's what we're aiming to do here. So some things to keep in mind as we're thinking about changes in the toll schedule. We want to build up that reserve fund. We want to end with a toll rate capable of supporting that loan. And, we want to probably maintain the difference between the breeze buy and the higher rates for cash or video toll collection. And we also want to not change these things any too often, keep them in 25-cent increments. Don't change it any more than once a year, ideally once before the bridge opens. And, the other, it goes without saying, all the existing discounts and toll exemptions that the port offers will continue to be honored. And, we're starting a transparent public engagement process that'll help inform those decisions. So here's the model, or basically how this little model works that we put together. It's got a revenue module that basically looks at bridge traffic by vehicle classification, so cars and 3-axle trucks, 4-axle trucks, et cetera. Looks at how those vehicles pay. So, we've got sort of a gradual shift toward breeze buy on the bridge. We expect that to continue. And so each year there's a slightly higher share of people paying electronically. And then this is multiplied by the toll schedule, which is basically how much each type of vehicle pays and by what payment method. And then there's an elasticity adjustment. So in a year when a toll increase happens, we reduce the traffic by a certain amount. And that's based on the previous sketch level traffic and revenue study that was conducted back in 2019. So all of that gives us gross revenue. And then from that, we want to deduct off our operations and maintenance costs and our R&R costs. And I'm joined here by Kate today, who's been working more on the cost side. And I'm going to turn it over to her for the next slide to just talk about some of the assumptions that went into cost.
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, so this here is really just a high level summary of estimated operations and maintenance and renewal and replacement costs for the current bridge. The O&M costs really come from, historical data and what it's costing you to operate and maintain the bridge as it stands. The maintenance costs within there are in line with your recently approved long-term work plan. And the rest of the O&M costs broken down, by personnel, utilities, insurance really are in line with what you've been reporting out on your financials. And then the R&R is, again, similar to the maintenance, is pulling from your recently approved long-term work plan.
So Kate, this is the existing Hood River Bridge
That's correct.
and your extraction from the budget.
That's correct.
So the peak that you see out there in 27, 28 is projected big increases in R&R on the current bridge.
Yes, sir. According to the current capital maintenance plan.
Okay.
And do we know what those are and if those can be pushed off?
Yeah, there's a study that came in from our engineering company. They projected this out and they told us which ones that you could shove. If the current bridge, if the new bridge looks like it's really going to hit 29, you could probably move most of that peak out. But we're going to have a forecast in early 27. How real is that date on the new bridge?
Because isn't some of that painting?
Some of it's painting.
What's the other big one?
Well, the cables are in here. We're gonna do the cables this year.
That's in 23. What's the other big one on there?
So there's rework on the deck, the grading. Yeah, some seismic work.
That's a pretty rough, if we're months from a new bridge being passable by traffic, it might be the year that we're incurring a lot of costs on a bridge that's about to be retired.
This is just really a heads up that if we can't get the funding and the bridge gets delayed, this thing has been pushed. Every year, this thing gets pushed out.
Yeah.
And there's gonna be a point in time where you can't, you gotta go with it.
And one note too on this is the previous CMP. I know the port's in the process of presenting, I think, an updated one tomorrow. We did not have that for this. So we can adjust this for that one. It kind of, I think, flattens that out a little more. But we can get that up.
I mean, in certain conversations, I think the dramatic peak is beneficial for what we're trying to really drive home. I would almost say like something like this would catch my attention more than sometimes where we used interest as a talking point about increased cost. I think this would step a lot of people back of, wait a second. You can't get this funding picture figured out. You're about to have to spend a ton of money the same year you want to be opening the new bridge.
Now, you could argue with the height of it, but in reality, something like this is gonna happen to the bridge.
Yeah.
Or you're gonna shut it down.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Go back to the revenue side. So, so as I mentioned, the data that's driving our calculations is bridge traffic by vehicle classification. We're using data since 2018. And we've got toll schedules and aggregated toll transaction data. We're using an elasticity factor of -7%. So, basically it suggests that, basically how much traffic would go down as tolls go up. And as you can see, we've got one of the issues is that there have been some variations, especially during COVID, of mid-year toll increases, as well as just changes or differences in the traffic by vehicle classification that are driving some error in our ability to go back and, kind of use our model to backcast what the toll revenue was in some of those previous years. But some years it's been very close. And in 2021, it was within about 5-6%. So just keep in mind, this isn't a perfect model because we've got variability in how many 3 or 4 axle trucks we had in a given year that isn't necessarily represented in the data that we received, but it gets relatively close. And when we apply that then with a 1.5% increase in traffic each year before about 2029 or so when the bridge opens, this allows us to at least forecast ahead generally what kind of money might we be looking at for a given toll increase. A couple of things that are not so relevant because this is going to get replaced by the new information from the upcoming traffic and revenue study is what kind of increase we would expect at bridge opening. The previous study suggested there would be a pretty sizable increase just because more vehicle types will be able to cross when the geometry is better on the new bridge. And then in addition, what is that long-term growth rate? And we expect to see an update on that number as well. This is that payment share and kind of how it's been changing over time. And at least what the previous study was suggesting is that we'll continue to see increases in tag use by both cars and trucks over time. And so what we're basically doing is interpolating each year between these values to figure out what that payment share would be in a given year. So we constructed 4 scenarios of what an across the board toll increase would look like. And generally the way we've constructed these is that the increase for a truck paying cash would be 4 times the increase for a breeze by paying auto. So the first scenario is a quarter for the cars, and that means 50 cents for a car paying cash, and 50 cents for a truck paying with breeze by, and $1 then for a truck paying with cash. And so what we can see here is in fiscal year 2024, that would be the new toll rate that would be in place under that scenario. So first scenario raises breeze by cars by a quarter, the final scenario by a full $1. And therefore, in that final scenario, it'd be about $4 for cash and $2 for breeze buy. Not too far from what a lot of those pier bridges are doing. Actually, your breeze buy discount would be bigger than what those peer group bridges are offering, where they're about $3 for tag and $4 for a car. All right, and if we look at how this reserve balance builds, so this is the gross revenue from the toll increase and just the increase, less those R&R costs and O&M costs. If we look at what we have by about 2028, aiming for about $15 million, what this preliminary analysis suggests is that we're going to need something more than 50 cents. Depending on how much of the revenue is set aside for building that reserve fund, could be higher than that. So into the 75 or $1 range. So those are our preliminary findings. This is going to get refined as that traffic and revenue study data becomes available over the next month or so, and basically provide information to the Port Authority Board as it adopts its toll plan for the next few years, and then implements that plan. So I'd like to open it up for questions at this point.
Could you go back to slide somewhere around 5 or 6? It's the definition slide of the two funds. One before that, I think. One more. Right there, right there. So to me, what we're trying to do with this effort is we're really trying to fund the first bullet, which is target of $15 million by the time we open the new bridge. But there's a second piece to this thing, which is build the debt service reserve fund. We need that fund in place when we close the TIFIA loan. Is that a true statement? So whatever and where I'm going with this, if we assume the TIFIA loan will be the last money we use on this project, because we're paying interest on it, I would think we would want to fund the dismantlement of the old bridge and the last piece of final construction. That's what we're probably targeting for the TIFIA loan. So with that in mind, that date that we need the cash is probably in early 2029, maybe late 2028. So we need enough money to service, to get that loan at that time. And how much of the 15 million do we need for that first sub bullet? Because the other two, they can keep going and keep building until we open the new bridge. The one that's really time constraint is that first bullet.
I thought that's what the definition of the 15 million was.
The 15 is the whole pot.
Oh, I thought that was what we needed.
No,
Is that correct, Chris? The 15 million, describe the 15 million, whether it's the first bullet under the pre-completion.
I'm going to defer to Kate on that one. What is your understanding on the components of that 15 million?
Yeah, I think right now we're working on the assumptions, and I'm gonna invite Mary to jump in if she'd like, but I think under the assumption is for the first bullet. But there are still a lot of unknowns, and so we'll.
I asked this specifically of Carrie when we were trying to define the 15 million. Okay, give me the components of the 15 million.
So I can jump in. This is Mary Franker from PFM. Very happy to be here. So the size of the debt service reserve fund is going to be a function of just how much you borrow from TIFIA. Generally speaking, the debt service reserve fund is going to be something along the lines of your maximum annual debt service. And so until we know how much you need to borrow, how much you can borrow based upon how much, there's a lot of moving parts here. And so the $15 million is, you know, as we were talking it through with the Carrie and the team from HNTB, is really, it's a target at this point. But to the extent that, you know, you don't need as much for your debt service reserve fund, it will be available to fund your repair and replacement fund and your O&M reserve funds. So it's a reasonable target at this point, given that there's so many unknowns.
So what I've been trying to ask out of the front, how much money do we need to have in the pot on, say, late 2028 to be able to get a TIFIA loan of $100 million? And does one of our scenarios get us there?
So I'm going to start with a very loose, for $100 million borrowing, your maximum annual debt service is probably going to be, on or about, 10% of that, maybe, depending upon the debt structure. And there's ways that you can work with TIFIA in terms of how you fund it so that you have a chunk upfront, depending upon your debt structure. That it would be somewhere along the lines of, 10, maybe $12 million for the debt service reserve.
Okay, so we need to look at the curves that out there in late 28, can we hit about $10 million? That's one, we need to hit that to be able to get.
There's a lot of assumptions, that's not leaving any leeway.
I know.
Operations, maintenance first year.
Yeah, I mean, again, there's a lot of moving parts here. And so, to the extent that you're in a position to accumulate some funding, to be able to address a lot of those different scenarios. And then ultimately, you'll need to have the cash in hand because TIFIA won't allow you to borrow for the funding of your debt service reserve fund like you would for a publicly issued bond.
Yeah, see where I was going with this. There was some thoughts early on that we're going to have to do a TIFIA loan 24, 25, 26, something in that range. If that's when we lock the loan down, that means we need $10 million by 25 and 26 in this reserve. That means our rates are going to have to go way up to be able to achieve that. That's why it's important to figure out when you need the money.
But the flip side is, when is money going to be coming from the various legislatures and from the feds? If the money isn't there from them, then we're providing it ourselves.
But then there's an increased risk talk that you're gonna have that at some point. You don't want to spend $100 million to pay it back and we don't have a bridge to pay for it. You want that to be the absolute last one.
I understand.
Good news is the next story is gonna have to deal with that.
Very cool. Is Carol on?
Okay, so we understand what you've got here. Could we, do you have the results of this? What each of those scenarios generates? Well, you got it here. It's
That's
hard
what
to
this
read.
graph is.
Which one in 2028 late gets you close to 10, $12 million?
This says the O&M in operation. It says O&M already in it, right?
Yes.
And the repair.
Well, this is just revenue. This is what a total increase would generate.
No, I know, but this is net, isn't it?
This is the full formula.
No, this is the
So,
full reserve.
moving-
This is everything.
Moving forward, this is Commissioner Anderson. Could you guys run a scenario where it's just $1 increase? So it's $1 increase for cash, but it's also $1 increase so just straight dollar increase for each different one and run that and see where we come up.
What's your thinking there?
Yes,
So rather
absolutely.
than say it's gonna be $4 for cash, $2 for breeze by, I want $2 for breeze by, $3. And I want to see where that falls on where it would turn out.
Yeah.
Because that's what I've heard is a possibility. But if that's a possibility that the port's gonna do in July, we haven't even run the number on it.
Okay, I hadn't heard that.
Well, there was some brief talk. Nobody's agreed to it.
Right, that's why I said possibility.
I was just wondering where you're asking.
Yeah, and part of in setting this up is so that we can run some scenarios of different ones. And take a look at them, so.
So that's the one I would like to see.
So is all of this anticipating that there's just one toll increase? with
Until the opening of the new.
Until the
bridge.
retiring of this bridge, yeah, okay.
Between now and the time we open up.
Right, but you just, so this is a balance, so the balance is going to be a net because money's coming in, money's going out. And this has money going out to do those,
Yeah.
this has that big spike coming out in
What
2029.
this,
Yeah.
what this is here is only the increase that we create on the toll times the number of cars between now and when the new bridge opens up.
So this is the
No, I'm reading
additional
it the way
money.
you're reading it.
Yeah.
I'm reading it as the, can someone just clarify this slide? Is this slide running that formula? So this number shown is just focused on the balance after all the other payments have already gone out that we know have to happen on all those given years?
What else would it be?
That is correct. And this is only the toll increment. So it's, the existing revenues or the existing toll continues to fund what it's currently
That's
funding.
today.
So this is just the extra.
The extra.
Okay,
That's right.
thank you.
I don't follow with a model like that, it should be linear then. Why is there an inflection point in 29?
So actually what that is that's the 11% increase in traffic that the previous sketch revenue
Predicted in.
sketch study looked at when the new bridge increases. So we're showing that happening in 2029.
Okay, that's what threw me off. Okay.
Yeah, it's not free growth. You got to actually build the bridge for it.
Okay, so could you guys run another scenario, dollar increase straight across the board?
Yes, we can do that.
All right, any other questions related to this?
I just have an observation that, this is all based on some pretty broad assumptions and, I need to spend a little time sort of poking around this to understand the sensitivity to those assumptions. Because it seems like we could easily get in a situation where it's, we're aiming for one number, we really need another number, and to get from one number to the other is going to be next to
And-
impossible.
And as Chris said, some of this will get better when we get the information out of the work that the Washington State Transportation Commission is doing.
Right.
Because their sketch level is down here, they're doing the next level up, which is a little more accurate, and then you've got investment grade at some point. That'll really get into the details and the predictability of it. And all of this is still estimates.
Right, I guess you can't retroactively make an adjustment in your toll, or you can only make future adjustments in your toll.
That is
So-
correct.
You make a decision,
We don't want to be.
and if your decision is sufficiently conservative, if your assumptions aren't sufficiently conservative, you will start to fall behind, and then you will be in a role reverse. That's all I'm saying,
That is
nothing
correct.
magical there, I'm sure you all know that.
There's two inflection points when you're setting the rate.
Yep.
The first one is getting a big enough reserve to qualify for a loan
Yep.
and then also to pay for it.
Yep.
The second piece of it is at the start of the new bridge being operational. You want the tolls high enough that you don't have a problem maintaining it, holding future reserves, paying back the loans. So
Right, no, I get
You gotta
that, but what
watch both
happens, as we're going forward in years and we make decisions assuming certain funding will be available at certain times from certain sources, and we don't know any of those numbers today. And because of that, we can easily find ourselves in a position where we do have significant repair costs on the existing structure, which are being subtracted off of that. And we're finding ourselves falling behind because of that.
yeah, but remember when the new bridge comes on play, the full toll goes to the new bridge.
Only when the new bridge comes out. If the
When
new
the new
bridge is
bridge-
there in 2030, then the calculation is entirely different.
Yeah, there has to be some assumption made of when you're gonna have the new bridge open. I mean, that you.
No, I don't have to make that
yet.
assumption, but you also have to look at what happens if you don't meet those assumptions, because we are still in a situation where we have to we have a financial liability, we have a financial necessity, which has to be met. And I need to see the math to know if that's gonna work
Yeah, see,
also.
I think that comes back as how good is the $15 million?
15, even as an estimate.
Is there any like
If I may.
scenario?
We have a 3 o'clock that we
Yeah.
said
Oh,
we would do, and we're 10 minutes late for it.
Oh,
So
And we can come right
switch
back
over
to
to that?
that.
Sorry.
Yeah.
sure.
All right, so Carol, Sneed, and Chris and Kate, we're gonna switch over to the discussion about the biological opinion and get an update from ODOT. So I'll give you a quick update and then Carol can jump in with what she has. We got some comments back from FHWA on the biological opinion that ODOT is working through. Based on some recent experience that they've had on a couple bridges, Abernathy and some others, that caused us to have to go back and relook at some assumptions that were made as part of the biological assessment, which informs the biological opinion. So we've done that work. WSP has made those updates. They provided them back to ODOT. We are meeting tomorrow with FHWA to see if what they did, how they want to incorporate that into the NEPA documents. Once we have that, then the information will go back to ODOT to inform the biological opinion, and they can continue to move forward. So Carol, I don't know if is there other updates on top of that? And did I summarize that correctly?
Yeah, I think you got that pretty well summarized. Just to embellish maybe a little bit, the idea is taking what the consultant team has put together for ODOT to update the biological assessment. We're trying to coordinate with FHWA. That'll be the meeting tomorrow to talk about how that should be formatted and presented as part of the NEPA process, and also to move forward into the biological opinion. So I think the good news is that our biology team feels like we have a great explanation of what the construction practices would be and how they would be mitigated, and can move forward based on that information. So now it's just a matter of how best to present that and bundle it all up in a package as part of the NEPA process.
And Carol, were there any other comments that we need to work through besides the ones about the temporary work bridges and that came from NOAA and NIMS that you're aware of?
I am not aware of any other comments that we need to address or should be addressing right now. I think we have good information based on the rework that was done.
And so this will allow what, oh, did I say WashDOT? I think I might have. ODOT to finalize the biological opinion, get it over to NOAA and NIMS for their sign off. As far as we know, this will get us to that point.
Yeah, so not to get too much into the process and all the specifics, I think the intent going forward is to give NIMS, the branch chief, some of the biological opinion, not the full biological opinion, to get feedback. So we don't go through this whole thing of, making what we think is perfect and them saying, no, that's not quite it. So we want to make it a little bit of an iterative process with them to make sure they're getting what they want this time.
Carol, this is Mike Fox. When do you see that the biological assessment will be finished and approved and behind us?
Yeah, so the biological assessment, I think, can be buttoned up pretty quickly. It's that next step of the biological opinion and getting the branch
That's what I
chief.
meant, I'm sorry.
Okay, yeah. So that submitting the biological opinion, I asked for a schedule update on that, and I'm sorry I can't give that to you because I wasn't able to get that feedback from our NIPS liaisons who are responsible for pulling together that biological opinion. But hopefully it would just be a matter of, I don't know, 4 to 8 weeks to get it all pulled together, submitted. Like I said, they're going to do it in chunks. So they definitely have some positive, head nodding, you're going in the right direction. This is what we want to see before they submit the full thing.
Are you involved in the process of then taking the final EIS and getting it approved so we can get a ROD?
So I'm involved in the preparation of the final EIS, working with that consultant team, and they've been updating the document. We had a document ready to go to FHWA for review, and FHWA wanted to just put a hold on it. This is FHWA legal review, I should say. And they didn't want to see it until we had buttoned up the Section 106, all the cultural resources pieces and the Endangered Species Act piece, the biological opinion. So once we get those pieces all pulled together into the document, then we'll get FHWA legal review.
Okay, and the tribal architect or
MOAs.
yeah.
Yeah, that's another piece of it. So
Well,
it's
yeah,
actually those.
And I know pretty much about that one, but the archaeological piece of it,
The 106. the
106,
Section
is
606.
ODOT doing that?
So we're working, go ahead.
Carol.
I was just
Sorry.
gonna say, we're working closely with the tribes and all the consulting parties on buttoning up the Section 106 process, SHPOs, all that.
So the consulting parties reviewed it. They just closed that portion in January. The 106 is now, and this is like a dominoes thing. The Section 106 MOA has to go to Yakima because they have to do their finding of effect. Is that the right word? Adverse effect. Sorry, adverse effect. And if there's a no finding of adverse effect from Yakima. So that went when we sent the Yakima MOA, the Yakima Treaty MOA, along with the 106 to Yakima. So once Yakima responds back to that, then it goes to SHPO, DAP, and DOJ for them to do their piece. They won't do their piece until Yakima gives us their response. So send an email to Roy today. He's going to reach back out to Yakima to see where they are. And then we'll probably need to set up a meeting with Yakima to get through that adverse effect discussion with Yakima so that it can then go to DAP and SHPO and DOJ for their next pieces. And then once that's done, then that can go to signature.
It just smells to me that we're talking about a rod the end of the year.
Yeah, I was about to say, like, how do we back time? And is
Yeah,
that possible?
this
Like,
is
if our goal
killing us.
is June for a rod, who is the point person making sure all those parts and pieces and people are staying on track with the timeline that we're wanting to keep this moving? Because the understanding has been a lot is ready and we were just waiting for, one or two final reviews or sign offs.
Yeah, this thing has been slipping year on year now.
Yeah.
And I'm getting real concerned. This is hurting our ability to get federal funding for our project. So Carolyn, I'm not picking on you, please. I'm just passionate about trying to get this bridge going. And how do we expedite this thing?
Well, I would say it's really good having Mike Shannon in your camp and pushing and helping us to coordinate all the pieces and parts. He's really been effective in that way and keeping us on track as a team. That's the whole consultant team and the ODOT team. And we've been involving FHWA. We had some transitions at FHWA that were a little bit of a hiccup, but now we've got a strong partner at FHWA, a new staff member there who's involved. And, I think that's just where it needs to go. I know ODOT has given a commitment to move forward on that biological opinion as quickly as possible. So I think, and that's coming from the top down. So all eyes are on this right now, recognizing your schedule and the need to keep moving forward.
So Carol, this is Commissioner Anderson. I hear what you're saying. And so based on what happened at other bridges, that adds 4 to 8 weeks every time we make a change. And so your goal is to take this back to NOAA, to the head in chunks, because I thought it was already written to begin with, and now we rewrote it. Now we're adding to it and we're taking it back to NOAA. And so it's every time it goes back to NOAA and they say, bring me a different rock, or I don't like this section. Can we assume that's 4 to 8 weeks of ODOT work each time?
I would say no. I don't think that's the case. I think it was an initial change at NIMS at the branch chief level that directed us to go back and redo the biological opinion. And we worked toward revising the biological opinion. And then the team at ODOT recognized that there was an issue with the way the construction process was laid out in the biological assessment. And there was concern there based on ODOT experience with these other bridges. And then we asked the consultant team to go back and look at their construction again to see if there was something that they could do to respond to ODOT's comments on how the construction was described and how it would occur. So when they had to go back and redo the construction method, then they also had to redo some of the assessment of the impacts to endangered species with noise, however many strikes they need to put a piling in, those all changed some of the noise assessment and how that would affect fish. So now we have that information. We just got it last week. They revised their construction methods and their assessment of those construction methods. And those need to go into a revised biological assessment or an addendum to the biological assessment. And so we have the raw data there. It's FHWA's call on how they want that data presented in, like I said, an addendum or a revised biological assessment. So while they're working on that, though, we now have that raw data and can move forward with the biological opinion and begin writing those sections that needed to be rewritten based on the changes in the construction method. So once those sections are rewritten, those can go. The idea is to send those to the NIMS branch chief to get their concurrence or agreement that, yes, you're in the right direction. This is the format we want to see. This is the level of information we need to see. And then we can complete the biological opinion and submit the whole thing.
Once you submit the whole thing, how long do you anticipate usually based on all your other submittals until it can be signed off?
I can't answer that. I don't know if it's a 30-day window typically or a 60-day window. I'm sorry, I don't know that off the top of my head.
And is there also once you submit that, does it then go to public comment or comments as well? So that would add more time to it?
No, that's the opinion of the federal agency on what the impact would be and what the mitigation commitments need to be that go into the record of decision. Basically, it's just another piece that goes into our final EIS and record of decision.
Thank you.
Carol, thanks so much for everything you've done so far. We really need your help going forward. This is on our critical path for our project. It's holding everything up. So whatever you can do, if we can bring extra pressure to help you, we'd be more than happy to help. Whatever you can do, just reach out to us and we'll do it. This is just super important to us.
Thank you so much. And I want you to know it is super important to ODOT as well. We're doing everything we can to keep it moving.
Thank you.
Okay, thank
Good. All right. All right, do we need to go back to any discussions on the tolling? We do, because I know Commissioner Anderson, you had a topic that you wanted to add to the discussion. So are we done with the discussion related to the model and with Kate and Chris?
Yeah, I think we are. I'm going to need to spend a little time with it. I think we all probably should spend some time understanding what assumptions are built in and what happens, which assumptions are most important to the conclusions and what happens if those assumptions aren't met.
So what I would offer is if any of you want, I'll say one-on-one, sit down to go through the details, let me know and we'll get the group together and sit down and walk through whatever questions you have, the background, how it happens.
I've gone through it.
Well, I understand.
I have one question regarding
That's what a model is.
the model and maybe as a takeaway of something else to consider, but this also could be a space where it's not by state domain and it's fully in the port, but so much of this is about these projections to the future. Within that model or one alternate model, is there a scenario of anticipating whatever that toll increase is we commit to, say it's $1 more? But that also during this period of construction, that weaning on the port side is a phasing of the balance shifting. Consumer sees no change in their toll, but that portion grows to become more going towards the new bridge and less into port reserves or budgeting or however they've been factoring in the toll. Is that part of this at all?
Between,
It's not. Although I think that could be a recommendation from the bi-state to the port, that should be added.
But to get to a recommendation somewhere, the analysis would be helpful to determine like how significant is that if we
Yeah.
see like a.
I can tell you the challenge that port faces right now, and we're involved in it, is that we have to wean ourselves off the bridge. You know, the rest of the operation, there's only 1 or 2 areas that actually right now is self-funding. All the rest of them, the airport, we take funding from the bridge to operate the airport. So if we're trying to wean ourselves off of that much, we've got to find other revenue streams to make up for it, or right size the operation, or a combination thereof. And I know the port, we're working on it. It's not real straightforward. There's a whole series that we're looking at, but when are we going to get the results of it? It's really hard to predict.
So right now, the formula is 100%, whatever the split is, until this drop off date of
And then
2029.
all of a sudden,
any additional,
that revenue stream stops for the port.
and any adjustments like you're suggesting would have, would be between now and the opening date of the bridge,
Right.
because once we hit opening date, 100% goes to the new bridge.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit worse than that, though, because I think that what I've seen so far, I might be misinformed, but what I've seen is what you're saying is true, presuming the bridge is completed in 2030. But there is no commitment that if the bridge project takes longer and we don't have a bridge in 2030, there's no commitment that the weaning is completed by 2030. In other words, there's no date certain at which the port is committed to completing. the
Today,
weaning
that's
process.
a true statement.
I think that's a
The port
problem.
is working towards it's going to happen in October 2029. There's no commitment that if it's
Right.
6 months later, the port doesn't get that money. The tolls collected other than this piece above it that we're talking about for the reserve.
So that is another variable to our calculations. That the port may be continuing to take its portion of the tolls.
Because you're still maintaining the bridge.
I'm not talking about the bridge part of it, I'm talking about the non-bridge part of it. So the airport, the marina, the recreational facilities, the industrial operations, so the economic drivers.
But I think what you brought up, I think it's a very valid discussion that I think the bi-state could and should have with the port. That let's work together, and as you come up with ways to wean yourself off the bridge, maybe we take half of that savings and you keep half the savings into a reserve that you need to build, because after the bridge is gone, you still got land that you want to develop, and it takes money to develop that land. If that's what the port's going to do after this bridge is over.
Yeah, I think I would just be curious, and obviously there's a ton of conversations still to be had, and a lot of this is I respect and appreciate is on the port side, but I think just in the thinking of committing to a toll increase and all of this tracking towards these goals, which are based on the new bridge, it seems an incentive. Maybe, that's the wrong word because it's a more forceful reminder that this is not just a dramatic drop off in 29. If we're phasing to 2029, then starting in 2025 is that 10 cents more goes only over to the new bridge, then 20 cents. So there's like a virtual rate increase that's happening that is not the user having to pay for, but it's the shift in operational approach by the port and this new entity. And in some formula that gets figured out, that's where I think it would be informative for us to see how significant is that, like, depending on what that balance is, maybe that 25-cent increase can get us there, but it can't get us there if there's no shift from, the split.
Well, and this is gonna make the discussion even worse. There's some concern on the porch side of the house that there's a feeling that the rate needs to go up a little now on the current bridge to get ready to pay for that lump that's coming on the maintenance on the schedule that you saw.
Yeah.
That they would like to see.
So they want more.
They want a little more. And the number that I've been talking to some people is maybe upwards of $2 million between now and 2029.
But you're talking more for the existing bridge.
Yes.
I think what Marla's talking about is.
2 million a
money
year
for
or
now.
I get it, but
Right.
this is going diametrically opposed to what you're talking about.
Yeah,
So I guess,
So there's a lot of moving parts there.
but I think also then what's a little concerning, because what was mapped for where we are with getting to a rod feels a little unsettling, loose. And I was okay with loose last year because it was the first take at all of these significant dollars thrown into infrastructure. But if we miss this window this year, the ripple effect of this on everything is now back to the toll conversation that people are trying to have this year. And how can we be informed if we feel like our hands are tied at every turn? To me, this is like all hands on deck. We cannot be submitting for these federal programs this year and not be confident that that rod is part of it or something we're adding very quickly. Because if we do, I am not going to continue to say I think all of us start to get uncomfortable being the face of promising a bridge people are driving on in 2029.
Right.
And that's
I
concerning.
think, listening to you, and I don't disagree with you at all. When I look at the critical items that I see in this bridge today, one is funding, two is get the rod.
Yeah.
done. And off we go. I can see past forward on all of that. Except the rod. I'm losing hope on the rod, and I'm just wondering if it's time that we put a political full court press on the organization to get the thing done. It's not like it's been around for just a couple of months.
Because also, what is the implication here? When are we starting to see additional costs that we're incurring? Because if there are things coming back that, in my mind, I'm thinking there's work potentially that's not been accounted for, and this has gone on now for a long period of time. When does that come before us? And are more dollars that we're trying to get into this project still going to an EIS process we thought would be done by now?
Yeah, there's probably some money hanging out with WSP. So you're gonna have a little bit of money, not a great amount in the big scale of things, but some. Where it really comes into play is delaying our ability to get funding, which is the first part that's really gonna hit us. If we can't go out for bid on the design, our progressive design bill this year.
Yeah.
We're screwed.
Yeah.
We could very easily lose a year like that. We don't hit the in water with it.
which changes the cost significantly.
So the reason I wanted to add this to the agenda and to the discussion right after the tolling is you guys have been doing a great job, but I think we're missing a big piece of this, and that is that it's pretty evident that if I was a legislator or if I was the federal government and you asked me for $125 million or you asked me for $200 million, and I'm thinking about giving it to you, but a significant portion of the money that you're already bringing is not going to that, there is absolutely zero reason I have to give you any money. Because you're diverting money off. The first thing that happens when we start taking the money and spending the federal dollars in 2025 is the Fed's gonna say, according to our own laws and our own statutes, every dollar that you make off of that current bridge has to go to this bridge. And so that weaning, in my mind, from what I've heard from the feds, has to take place. And it's not a 29 weaning, it's as soon as you start spending our money weaning. And if I mean, honestly, if we're gonna go down there and advocate for money for 125 million from the state, and we walk in there and we say, yeah, but we're taking $3.5 million a year and we're spending it on other things. If I was a legislator, first thing I would say is, well, you better stop spending $3.5 million on other things and put it towards this bridge, because that's less that we have to take from everywhere else. In any way, and even if you're gonna come and you're gonna say, we need to add to the current toll. Like you're saying, some of the board members, we need to add to the current toll to pay for these big projects in 2029. But if you just took some of the 3.5 million you're making every year off of it, you could already do that. And that just, it is not gonna sit well with all the members that are the signatories of the CFA. Because in 2020, in 2030, the CFA, all this new bridge authority is gonna spend $30 to $50 million removing the port's liability. And what it's not feeling like is that the port is coming to this with a very clear plan that in the next 2 years, we're gonna wean ourselves off, because the one thing we haven't talked about is how is this new bridge authority gonna pay their own bills? Okay, we're talking about $1 plus or $1 or so just in order to build the reserves. How are we gonna pay for their own maintenance and operations of this new authority that we're all about to sign off on in the next 2 weeks without clear commitments from the port on where they're going, on how they're gonna wean themselves off and how quickly they can do it? Because it's really hard being one of those signatories when it sounds like the port wants to keep their cake and their golden goose and keep it going until the last moment, and then they'll be like, okay, now we don't need it. We have to, I mean, honestly, it's hard for me to go back to my seatmates, and it's gonna be really hard for me to go and sell any sort of an increase to the public with our names associated with it without very clear commitments from the port ahead of time. This is how fast we're weaning ourselves off. These are the changes. This is the structural things that have to happen, because today is the new day. We're all gonna sign the CFA.
Yeah, and that's in the sense of urgency. For this transition doesn't seem to be the same at the port as it is for us. We're going out to sell people on signing up to be commissioners. And they're effectively taking on becoming the face of this mess, is kind of what I have to say. They're signing on to be the face of it, and it's hard to imagine people voluntarily doing that when this group seems to get it, but the Port Commission doesn't have the sense of urgency that we should have been off of this. We should have started this transition process 5 years ago, 10 years ago. We didn't, but we're going to catch up now. Because we're actually, our plan now is to build a bridge, it's not to figure out how to delay building a bridge.
I think we're all in violent agreement.
Yep.
So how do we take this back to the port? And I think, and I'll tell you, I need your help.
Well, I guess my answer would be one of the simplest things to do is the only time you have leverage, use it. And the time that we have leverage is right now, because if we haven't sat down with the port for one big meeting, but if we go to the port and we're like, look, until you guys say that you're gonna wean yourselves off at this rate, we're not signing the CFA. I mean, that's where I am personally right now, because it sounds like from everything you're hearing, you're thinking about raising rates when we've already raised rates in 2018, and that was the sell for a new bridge. Well, we don't have any money in that pot for a new bridge. And now you want to raise rates again, but it's to pay for maintenance, and God forbid we start painting a new bridge the year before we take it down.
Yeah.
So, or even 5 years before we take it down, rattle cannon, I don't care.
So would you guys, if we set up, it's gonna have to be a good half an hour discussion at the, I guess at the port meeting.
I'd say it'd take an hour, but
Yeah,
can't be tomorrow.
well, it can't be tomorrow, that's right. You guys willing to come to the port meeting and?
Yeah, I mean, I think a joint, a session of us with the full port commissioners, I would hope can be constructive and beneficial for everyone, because I do think this is just, it's becoming a lot more stark. And I think this is this critical tipping point we're at in 2023 and seeing that, yes, I mean, those estimated maintenance costs of 28, 29 concern me because it's more their need to get our feet on the fire of the things that have to happen this year. And that ROD has got to happen. And this toll conversation has got to become more intentional into the weeds about what we're all really coming to the table for. And if
Okay,
it's a
so-
bridge.
So how about if we, Kevin, are you still on?
See.
Yes, yes,
all of
I'm
that.
listening intently.
Good. So can you get us on the agenda for not tomorrow night's meeting, but the next meeting? And I agree, this thing, once we start talking about it, it's gonna go an hour.
I mean, would it be more sense to have a special meeting? I mean,
Yeah, I think I would agree with that, Commissioner Anderson. Let me work on that. It'd probably be a separate day. I think I've got a good handle on your schedules, but let me work on that in the next, get that scheduled in the next 2 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks.
Yeah, just remember, we're in Salem next week for part of it.
Yeah, it's gonna be a busy month, but I think it's a high priority.
Okay, appreciate it. So on the ODOT issue, you guys got any ideas how we can try and break that one loose?
Yeah, I think we take turns and each of us takes a week to camp out wherever the main office is where this is going on. I mean, I guess that's the funny way of it, but I feel like there has to be an intensity pickup here of weekly. And Mike, it sounds like you've been all over it. Thank you. I appreciate that. But whatever the next level of all over it is, I think has to start.
I'm concerned. Carol said, she asked them for a timeline and an update and she
Yeah.
couldn't even get it from the two people who do it. I mean, that scares me in its own right. I mean, how much was the rework? How many pages was the rework on the sounds? I
It
mean,
was a handful of pages.
it was a handful of pages. The whole thing should have already been written. And all you're doing is incorporating it into what's already written. I want them to see. Is there a draft? Is it done? Where are we at? And if they say we can't provide it, well, that tells me it's probably not even there.
I think we can't stop there. We got the biological opinion as one document. We've got to get the architectural with the tribe. We got to get that behind us. And then we got to get, I guess it's ODOT to give the blessing on the full document of the EIS. And then who does it finally get approved by?
Then you've got the public process,
FHWA is the final.
but we still have the public process on the EIS, right?
No, that's all done. We're past all of that. We're literally down to the final signature pieces. And it's the biological opinion. And then it's this section 106, which, like I said, has the steps. You gotta get Yakima to do their piece, which was the initial step of that was sending them the treaty MOA and the section 106 MOA and getting them to respond to that. So I talked to Roy, emailed Roy today. He's reaching back out to Yakima to do a follow-up. We're gonna sit down and have a meeting with Yakima to find out how we can accelerate getting them to give their opinion. Once we have that opinion, then it goes to SHPO, DAP, and DOJ. And then they have 30 days from the time they get it to do their piece. So once we get it out of the Yakima and into SHPO, DAP, and DOJ, then there's a 30-day time clock on that component. Then there's the biological opinion that has to go with that has a little less defined.
And that,
to that.
back to your 30-day windows at all those agencies, biological, all of that is assuming the biological opinion's already
comes
been
in.
attached and completed.
Right, and then the final piece to that is right now, FHWA is requiring that we have all 4 treaty MOAs signed and done before they will sign off on the ROD. I think if we can get the biological opinion done and we can get the 106 through DAP, SHPO, and DOJ, we go back to FHWA and say, hey, we're already in the process of negotiating with the tribes. Here's the progress we've made made, can you go ahead and sign the ROD and the EIS prior to us getting these final signatures? They've done it in the past on other projects in Washington. I have no idea whether they will or will not do it on this one. I mean, they very well may not,
I
but
think part of our problem here is, we're talking with guys down here in various groups. And things are churning down here. But I think we gotta get up here.
Yeah, I think Mike,
So-
like, but at one point, why were we saying we thought this was gonna be done by the end of last year?
because that's what we were being told by the
Yes.
people
It's-
that were signing off.
So to me, where my head is going is. There's a window of us losing credibility because now we have been talking multiple times, saying this tracking of a timeline. I'll give us the grace period of winter 2023, but if this is starting to go further out into spring and potentially summer. Then yes, now what I want to protect is our project, and to me, that is going up a layer. And speaking more candidly about why we are in the situation we're in, but we need to own that we clearly missed a mark here. Like how we thought with confidence, this was all wrapped up by December of 2022, and what just got outlined. Even without waiting period, sounds like multiple months. It's just, there's a big disconnect.
Out in the normal construction industry, what we would do with this is we get all the parties in the room and we would start out with a schedule that says, okay. Here's what the schedule is. Does anybody have a problem with it? And we get them locked into it, and then we just start hammering away until it gets
But
done.
we're not in that world. We're in a different world. I'm just wondering, I don't know if Ryan is actually there or if his things just on, but I'm
That's what I
wondering.
was gonna say the same
I
thing.
wonder if we
right?
can ask Ryan just to tell us if he has any observations he can share with us. You know, what can we do? What should we do? Are we more nervous than we need to be? Or, and there he is. Hey, Ryan.
Hey, sorry, hold on. I wasn't on. I was kind of listening as I was doing some other things. Can you guys see me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, I can't see my own camera. So what was the question? Was it about the rod and the
Yeah.
environmental work?
I guess I would summarize it, Ryan, is how.
Yeah,
what can
and
we
so
do?
I've been texting or with Carol just to say I don't think the information she provided was satisfying you guys. So there's we play a liaison role here, right? This isn't ODOT staff folks who aren't getting it done or aren't prioritizing it. We are. There's a bunch of other players, and what I was just suggesting is, listen, maybe what we need to do is get you guys in the room with NIMS and Federal Highways and us, and we can all sit around. I mean, you guys can sit and actually talk to the people who are some of the decision makers or the liaisons. I'm frustrated because I hear your angst, I hear your energy to getting this done, and I'm in the exact same place. I want to figure out how to be helpful, and so. I haven't sat in on these in a while, and I'm now sensing that there's definitely a need to make sure that I'm a little bit more engaged personally in kind of what's the role between you and between the ODOT staff and then between our federal partners. And I also have an opportunity. I have a couple of FHWA folks that I meet with on a pretty regular basis, and I'll continue to kind of make sure that they're aware of it and see if we can't harden up those timelines as you guys are kind of discussing. The other thing is there's a lot of stuff going on. This is not the only project on the books. It's the only one that you guys are really interested in seeing get done tomorrow. But there's a lot of other high priorities out there too. So how do we make sure that we make them aware of why it's important, right? Those graphs that you were talking about and the funding you're talking about and why it needs to happen at a certain rate. Otherwise, these bad things happen. I think that would be a conversation that could be helpful. I know Kevin's been reaching out to those folks as well, but if I can play a role in some type of a liaison and get some folks in the room that you guys want to talk to, I'm happy to try to do that.
Hey, Ryan, this is Kevin. One of the frustrating parts of this process is that we have the ODOT liaisons to NIMS, but we never actually see anybody from NIMS. If we were going to call everybody together, who do you anticipate from NIMS would actually attend?
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. You say who you want, and I'll work on bringing them in and see if we can. set up a
No,
meeting.
that's actually a question to you. Who from NIMS should we be asking for, the branch chief or because we don't really ever see the NIMS people. We see Federal Highways, they've been a great partner, but we never see anybody from NIMS.
Yeah. Well, no, that's what I'm saying. Let's ask Carol. Let's get our NIMS liaison and ask them, like, who else do we need?
So if we're gonna do kind of a great big group hug here, I think we ought to look at what it's gonna take to get the rods signed. And all the precursor steps that we gotta get whoever involved and make that happen. So that would include NOAA, it include ODOT, it would include Federal Highways, it would include.
Mike, I would suggest that we ask Mike Shannon to work with Ryan to come up with this list to make that happen. Let's not hear that now, but we now have if Ryan's offering to help, which it sounds like he is, let Ryan work directly with Mike, who knows how to do this, and get the right people in the room, and then we can provide.
Yeah, and I wouldn't call it a hug. It doesn't sound like anyone wants to hug. It sounds like
We'll start with a handshake.
You guys want to throw a few elbows, and if you think that it's time for that, and you want me to help bring some other people in the room, I don't want to get hit alone.
No, thank you, Ryan.
Hey, Ryan.
We really appreciate it. I
Yeah,
think,
hey Ryan, this is Mike. I'll reach out to you and we can brainstorm on who needs to be at the meeting. I'm thinking that probably Keith Lynch is the one we need to meet with, and maybe it's a little higher level, smaller group meeting with Keith to see how we can get a commitment from NIMS and NOAA to prioritize the project.
Yeah, sure. That's if we have liaisons, we should be liaisoning. And
liaising is the term.
I'm not sure that's a word. Yeah,
liaise.
But we gotta be doing it. Yeah, I make up words like that, strategery, other things. It's you can
make that one up.
Okay, let's keep moving.
Okay. All right, just an update on the Washington State Transportation Commission study. Their next meeting is February 15th and 16th. Currently, there's no agenda items related to the toll study they're doing for the bridge. The next update they have on their schedule is March 13th. So we've asked them to come here on March 6th, just prior to that, and review what they're going to discuss with the Transportation Commission on the 13th, and then come back on the 20th to give us an update on what happened at the meeting on the 13th. So that'll be happening in March. We'll get a couple meetings with the group that's working through the Washington State Transportation Commission TNR study. So, grant funding, there's not a lot of update there. We are still working on the RAISE grant that goes in February 28th. And the reporting to the other grants is on a quarterly basis. So we're working through that. We are still working on the build grant. It's a process to even be able to submit to the federal government on the build grant. So I've gotten the second round of certifications that I need to be able to submit. And we're waiting on a training to do the third piece of it from FHWA. So as soon as we get that, we'll be fully certified to submit invoices for reimbursement on the build grant. So the Treaty Tribe MOAs, those are going pretty well, if I can find wood. The Yakima Nation, we did submit that to them. Roy sent that out to them on the 26th of January. He's going to email them again this week to check in and see where they are with reviewing that MOA. And then I've asked them to see if we could set up a meeting to just sit down and update them on the project, but also to find out where they are with a couple decisions that we need from them.
I would suggest we push that a little bit. Don't wait on.
Yes, we are. The NESPERS, we submitted the MOA to the NESPERS on the 17th of January. We've been having discussions. We just had a discussion on the 2nd with Amanda Rogers, which is their legal counsel. And after doing that, we sent her the MOA. I'm sorry, it was submitted to ODOT on the 17th. We submitted it to the NESPERS tribe on the 2nd. and we are following up with Amanda as soon as she gets a chance to look through the MOA. We've introduced her with Port's legal counsel so that they can start discussing it with the Nez Perce. Umatilla, we sent the draft MOA to them on the 25th. We had a couple different discussions with them. We have a follow-up meeting on the 22nd with Umatilla to see where they are with the treaty MOAs. And then from there, we'll continue that discussion. They are aware of our calendars of trying to get the MOAs done by May. They also did, and one of the handouts we gave you today was the letter of support from the Umatilla tribe. So we will start using them as well as the Yakima as when we do our support for our grants.
So one of their folks is coming in tomorrow night to the Port Commission, and we're going to formally acknowledge that receipt of this, but also we're giving them rights of passage, free rights of passage across the old bridge, and by that also to the new bridge. So.
And then Warm Springs is the outlier. We have not sent the MOA to the Warm Springs. We are working on getting a meeting set up with them. One of our folks was able to have some initial conversations, but we have not locked down a meeting yet with Warm Springs. I know they've been going through some internal reorganization and some challenges. So we're hopeful that in the next week or two, we'll be able to sit down with them and be able to submit the treaty MOA to the Warm Springs, and then it will officially be out with all 4 tribes.
So this is one case, Mike, that in the last month, you guys have made a lot of progress with the treaty tribes. More so than we've had in the last 2 years.
Hey, this is great because this allows us, this and the Yakima, as I understand, allow us to say that we have support of treaty tribes. We have support of the community. We've been saying that we have support of environmental groups. I know that I've informally talked to environmental groups, but do we have any, like, as Friends of the Gorge signed the letter? It should be really simple to get, what's his name? The director.
Kevin, do you know if we've ever gotten one from them?
Yeah, we have. There's Peter Cornelison's the local guy, but I'm thinking that it's the person out of Portland.
Yeah, which is Kevin.
He's relatively new, I believe.
Oh, there's a new person?
Well, I'm thinking that there was an attorney there. I want to say last name was Lang, L-A-N-G.
Yeah, Michael Lang was the attorney there. Yeah, and then he worked for Kevin, whose last name I can't recall, who's the executive director. So are you saying there's a new attorney there now?
I believe so, but it's been it's probably been before COVID. It'd probably be worth a.
Kevin Gorman was the executive director, and Kevin Lang is his legislative expert. That's the last I recall. So those are the folks I've dealt with. But if we reach out, I'd be happy to reach out to them if that's what we want to do.
I think we should, yeah.
Do we have a letter to ask for?
We can get you a sample letter from some of our other support letters, or we can draft one for their signature.
Just to make the broad statement that they're the most recognized environmental group in this.
It's Friends of the Gorge.
Friends of the Gorge, yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
And we're shooting for the same thing from the unions.
Yeah. So and just that just shows we're making the statement. I can make it honestly and believing I'm telling the truth when I say that this is, everyone supports this, but it's the more we have actually physical letters, the easier it is to put it in front of someone and say, look, we can prove it.
Yep, we'll work on that. RBMC, we are working through our design build RFP, progressive design build RFPs. We're pulling that together. The other big thing is the geotech is outside, working on doing their initial upland drilling. They'll finish that this year. We'll go over to the Washington side. On the Washington side, we did get our right of entries from the private owner as well as Clickitat County. So we have one more permit to get. We had to get those, and then we can go get the final permit, and then we'll be ready around April, May timeframe to go do the Washington boring, and then we'll get started in the river. I think it's around June timeframe that they're planning to be out in the river doing I think there's 10 water cross borings that we'll do in the summer. We're also working through surveys. They've been doing, going out and capturing all the control points as well as the existing utilities. Doing right of way research, to get all the parcels mapped and understand all the parcel impacts. So we'll continue to work on those items as well. We did speak with the railroad. They want basically a box that fits a future triple track, as well as 30-foot vertical clearance. So I don't think that's gonna be any major issue for the bridge. We're spanning them anyway, so it'll just be a matter of keeping piers outside of that. The bigger discussion as we get farther down will be contracting with them for the flaggers and other things that they need when we get towards construction. So we will start those conversations and start over the next year getting some of those agreements in place. And they said right now they're not as busy as they have been in the past, so that's a good thing for us because railroads typically take a very long time to get through. But they said right now it wasn't that bad. So
When you say box, that's a conceptual box?
yeah, that would be the constraint
physically
box that
create
we
a
would give
box.
to the designers.
Good.
Would be yeah. And then permitting, I gave you a list of permits. All of these permits actually were what was geared towards the geotech work. So it just gives you kind of an idea of all the permitting that has to be done to do just, simple borings in the water. So, but there is a lot of that needs to be done, so. And then you heard the update from ODOT. I will say that all the changes that were happening at the FHWA level are complete. They do now have their full staff. So that hopefully that will help things to go a little smoother also. We are meeting with ODOT and WashDOT and FHWA to start talking about their criteria and how they're going to engage as we get into the next phase of the project with the preliminary engineering and construction to see what reviews they're going to want to do, what requirements they're going to want for their pieces, because they each will own certain portions of the project. So we need to know how they're going to be engaged in that. And then to start coordinating with ODOT on how we'll put the RFP and the procurement out. All of that is contingent on us getting funding either from Washington or Oregon programmed in 23. If that does not happen, then we will have to revisit that schedule. But we also just today were asked on the Washington side to submit a couple letters. They're really filling out some forms on requests for funding. Through their legislative folks to put those waters, asked for one, and King asked for one. So we're submitting that through our lobbyist for them to submit in for funding, official funding requests. So you can feel that there is a lot of discussion about this project going on at the state legislative levels with all the information and things we're being asked to submit. So I think we're getting attention. I think it just goes back to reinforce the need to get this FEIS and rod fence.
Yeah, the frustration I have at the Oregon level is that every discussion, people are basically acknowledging our need and acknowledging the priority of the project, and they're simply saying, yeah, I wish we had money. I don't know how you fix that.
I'm being optimistic that they're at least talking about it now, so. And they are actually asking questions about how they can phase it. And when we would need it. So that's the reason in creating this new graph that basically says, look, if you can give us 30 million in biennium 23 and 95 and 25, then we can continue to keep the project moving. So we're trying to be flexible with them of saying, here's how we can spend the money if you can get it to us even in phased approach. So, but if we don't get anything in 23, we probably will lose the 29 timeframe. If we don't get something programmed in this 23.
And then we recalculate all the numbers.
Yeah, everything will shift a year, so yeah, your cost is gonna be more.
And I can tell you from what I know of it, if we don't get the funding this year, we're not gonna make 29.
I also think that TIFIA financing, I think the reality of where that might start to have to be pulled from could shift too. Because I could see just with some of these house state dynamics, of when funding comes in from them is going to inform when we're really drawing potentially.
If we have a commitment.
Yeah, if the
to that, if you don't
commitment's
have a
there.
commitment, you're onto the problem Mike just described, that how are we going to take a TIFIA loan based on,
Yeah.
it's gonna be paid back by bridge tolls on a bridge that may not get built.
Yeah,
right?
no, definitely, but I
Yeah.
can see where potentially with
If I was
Oregon
in the
or
authority, I
Washington,
would sign off on it.
when those things come in.
If we don't get I'll say some form of around 75 million, whether it's all the 75 from Move Ahead Washington or some combination of additional money from Washington and Oregon that gives us somewhere in that 75 to 80 million dollar range, then we will probably not be able to go out with the progressive design build until we do.
You
Because I
might
don't
get the
think we will
package
get.
ready to go, but
We'll get we can
We're
get the
not gonna
package ready
issue
and
it.
get ready to do the RFP, but I don't think we'll have any interest from industry without that. At least an initial construction project that would make it worthwhile, then that's gonna have to be somewhere in the 75 to $100 million range.
and you can't blame the contractors for not being interested.
Oh, sure.
So,
White Flag are really good people.
Yep.
With a real unknown.
Okay, it sounds like I have to go and buy another Powerball ticket for the project.
Seriously.
Okay, let's
all right.
All right,
put our money up on the table.
So that was everything. If you want to go out and see what they're doing with the geotech, we can go out and have them explain what they're doing.
I would like to see it.
Give you a
I
tour.
know, we
what
did the
they're
same thing on the Columbia River Highway project, and to do what they're doing there was more than 6 months of application process, because it's in the scenic area, and hundreds of pages of documentation. And it even involved taking these little plants that were growing on the hillside next to it and moving them down to Salem for monitoring.
So they started in November of the process and we phased it, so we've
Yeah.
got, enough to do these two borings. I can't go do Washington yet, but. Yeah,
We
it took
used to
from
do that
November
at
to get here.
Hanford, and what we were picking up out of it was Swansea NBC.
Yeah, don't tell me this.
So, yeah, I mean, they're looking to go 120-foot-ish deep.
Yeah, I keep on seeing him yanking stuff out.
Yeah,
putting
and
new
they
ones
take
in, so-
samples every 5 feet, and we do have our cultural resources archaeologists out there that's sifting and looking as the samples come out, as they go through. So we anticipated a 40-ish feet of fill. And they're thinking they'll get to like rock at about 70 feet, and then they want to go about another 30 to 40 feet once they hit some sort of rock, so. we'll see.
Yeah, so this is almost exactly where there used to be a swim beach here.
Yes, in the old pictures, this was a lot
This is
lower and
where that guy who looks like he's about to flash everybody with his trench coat is standing.
Yep.
Almost,
all right.
that's what I was thinking,
I
exactly.
mean, with that, we can close if you guys are all right with closing.
Okay,
Yep,
we good?
I'm good.
All right, we're adjourned.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Kate.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Yeah.